Hey guys, welcome to my, let's just call it a lockdown environment, facility, my little corner where I get to spend this time. Now, if you're watching this, like, let's say maybe a year from the date that it was published, maybe a little longer than that from now, who knows, maybe a little shorter. Maybe just a few months from now. But if you're watching at a certain point in time, you're going to know that, well, let me just congratulate you now. You survived. Hopefully, I'm still making videos by that time. But anyway, today what we're going to be talking about is soft light. Soft light's is something that a lot of photographers, that seems to be like the holy grail, doesn't it? For a lot of people, it's like, oh, if I can achieve soft light, my portraits will just be amazing. My subjects will just, it's like considered like a flattering kind of light. Now that's subjective because you can have soft light that's maybe a little too soft. At least for my taste, some soft light. We're going to get into that. I'm going to show you some examples, and that's really what this. I'm kind of building today's video around some example shots that I did, and we're going to talk about different ways to, I guess, do some, achieve soft light with different techniques. Now, there are many different ways to achieve soft light. People will put attachments on their flash units. They'll use softboxes. There's lots of different techniques. Some are better than others, maybe. I think, again, that's subjective. It all just kind of depends on what you like, what you think looks good. Why do people want softer light? Why do they think it looks so much better than, say, a little more contrast, a little harsher light? I think that the answer lies in the fact that soft light tends to reveal less detail, especially in the skin, on the surface of the skin. Harsher light, more contrasty light, more sort of directional light with a lot of fill. That harsher light will reveal all the little bumps and lines, pimples, things like that. Anything what a lot of people might consider unflattering. And so I guess that's where that comes from now. When we're talking about achieving softer light, ultimately it comes down to the basic fundamental principles of how light works in photography. And specifically, there's this rule that says, the larger your light source relative to your subject, the softer the light's going to appear, on that subject. Now, that doesn't mean that the light source has to be huge. It just means it's relative to the subject. So in other words, if the light source is about, if your light is about this big, right up here, it's going to look pretty large relative to your subject's face, right? And if it's, the other side of the room, it's going to get smaller and smaller as it goes, visually. And so it's going to become relatively a smaller light, and it's going to give you, generally, it's going to give you more contrast. Another thing I want you to remember is that I'm not sure a lot of people believe this. When I say this, I'm trying to get a point across, and a lot of people just don't understand this. I think you can understand this, though. There's really no such thing as a light modifier emitting soft light beams, okay? Light isn't soft or hard, it's just light, okay? The individual, little packets of light, little electrons coming from any light source. There's no such thing as softer light. There's just more dispersed light. There's light that's coming in from different angles. So that's the thing I want you to keep in mind. All right, like I said, I shot some photos here for examples and some demonstrations, a little experimental work here so that we could talk about this, and we're going to go over those. All right, so what we're going to be doing here is comparing various types of light modifiers and how they actually affect the look of the portrait. And we're going to be using the standard 45-45 position, where basically you've got the light about 45 degrees to one side of the camera to subject axis, and about coming in about 45 degrees in this direction or this direction. Usually the way that you can tell if you're in the general ballpark for having the light in that position is you'll see the catch lights in your subject's eyes at about the 11 o'clock or the 2 o'clock position up here. And we'll get into that. I have some examples. I'll just kind of zoom in on those. Now for all of these examples, I'm going to be using the Godox AD400 Pro flash. And my camera settings are going to be consistent at, let's see, we're going to be using f8, 1/250th of a second, and the ISO is going to be 100. And so that's going to be the case all the way through. A lot of things that we're going to be showing you, they're going to be consistent. And I'll just make note of where the changes are. Okay, so here we go. All right, so like I said, we're using the AD400 Pro, and we're using this reflector along with it, and this reflector comes with the unit. We're going to shoot, see this photo, we've got the power at 1/64th. We're about 24 inches from the AD400 Pro to the subject, and as you can see here, the shadows are pretty well defined. We've got the shadows here on the chin, the nose, and this face shadow here. I want you to take note of how crisp the hair looks. Now, this isn't something that you may or may not like in your portraits, but this is a wig. This is not like human hair, but still, you're going to get the same kind of look. But just keep a note of that as we proceed through the rest of the pictures. All right, now here I've moved the AD400 Pro to 48 inches away. Okay, so now that we've increased the distance, we've got to increase the power, and I'm now shooting with the power at 1/16 and a third power. All right, now you'd think that you'd get more contrast, and it doesn't seem really like you're getting a lot more contrast with this shot, but you think you'd get more because you're taking this little or this relatively small light, it's unmodified, and you're taking it and you're moving it farther away from the subject. So why isn't there more contrast than we see here? Why isn't it more pronounced? I'm guessing because we've got some room bounce now, because you've moved the flash farther away from the subject. It's got more time to spread out as it emits from the flash head, and so parts of the room are picking up that light and bouncing some of it back onto the subject, but it's still pretty contrasty. All right, in this shot, our light source is still at 48 inches away, and we're using a 40-inch translucent reflector as a scrim. I'm holding this at about 24 inches away from our subject. So the scrim is actually halfway between the subject and the light. Now we've got the light at 1/8 power, and you can see that the portrait is it's dramatically softer as far as the light goes in contrast. So you can see that really makes a difference when we're using a scrim like this. Now this next shot, still light remains consistent in its position at 48 inches away, and we're using a 43-inch translucent shoot-through umbrella this time, and it is about 27 inches away from our subject. We're still at 1/8 power with the light, and you can see that there is a slight bit more definition to the edge of the shadows. Why? Even though we've got probably about 3 more inches of modifier here, it's probably because the umbrella is not a flat panel like the reflector scrim was. You've got more light coming in from the area on the top of the dome of the umbrella than you do on the side. As it extends to the edges, you've got less light actually reaching the subject from those areas. So yeah, a little more contrast is understandable. That's why a lot of people prefer to use, say, something like a softbox instead of an umbrella, because a softbox has a flatter panel. And that's what we're using in this next shot. Light source, again, is positioned where it has been at 48 inches away, but we've now got this glow 36-inch softbox on here. Now I've removed the reflector off of that AD400 Pro because the glow softbox just won't attach to it with that reflector on there. And so inside the glow, you've got essentially a bare, bulb. The glow is 36 inches in diameter, and we've got it 34 inches away from our subject, still at 1/8 power. I want you to notice the color changes here with the various modifiers, and we got a color change here with the glow, and that happens, depending on the modifier. And I also want you to notice the catch lights. Now they've changed. They will change depending on the relative size of the light as it's reflecting in the eyes. Now this effect here is slightly more contrasty, even with the internal baffle that I'm using in the Softbox. So I don't just have the one panel, I have a second panel in there, and you'd think, oh, well, 2 panels, it's even softer light. Well, no, not necessarily. I would guess that we're getting a little more contrast with the glow, probably because the overall lighting surface it's just the output surface here, the front panel, it's just a little smaller. It's 36 inches diameter, and like our other two were 40 inches, 43 inches, so that might have a lot to do with it. Now on to our next photo. Light source still at 48 inches away. We're using a shower curtain liner. Okay, this is a large, inexpensive, translucent panel. Okay, you can pick one of these up for. Deidre, what would a person pay for a shower curtain liner?
Could be anywhere from $3 to $5.
$3 to $5. That's amazing. I can't believe it. I attached it with some gaffer tape, or in desperate situations I've used duct tape, whatever. Nothing fancy. I had a couple of extra light stands. I attached it to that with some tape, and there you go. Nice and easy and cheap. And you've got this, look at the effects here. We have, let's see, I pulled it out to about 40 inches of surface area, and I have in this case, the curtain is about 40 inches from the subject. The light is at 1/4 power right now. And you can see we've got these very soft transitions. All right, so now we're going to move the panel in this next shot we're going to move it closer. Now we've got the panel 24 inches from our subject, and this allows the light emitting from our AD400 Pro to cover a wider area of the shower curtain panel, because now the light is farther away from where it's hitting the shower curtain, so it had more chance to spread out a little bit before it hits the shower curtain, and then that light emitting from there is a little wider on our subject. We've also got it closer to the subject, so if we follow our rule, the shower curtain is now relatively larger as it moves in closer to our subject, right? So also note the catch lights here. That's something you should always look at, is the catch lights. It gives you not only clues to other people's photos and kind of like what they're using as far as modifiers go, but it also tells you something about when you're shooting. I mean, I've seen weird catch lights, when people are using things like ring lights or double side lights that are really thin, like using those ice lights, or using very thin strip lights. But anyway, we've got some super soft transitions. And I would argue, if you think that, hey, the softer the light, the better, I would argue that you can get so soft with the light, you get to the point of the light looking dull. All right, super soft light can end up looking too flat, I think. All right, so here in our final example, doing the same exact setup as the last one, but now I've added that AD400 Pro's reflector back onto the light. And look at this, it kind of thins it out. It adds a little more contrast, which in my opinion makes the portrait that much more interesting. Okay, so what makes light look softer on a subject's face? It's generally, what it comes down to is smoother transitions from light to shadow. The shadows are kind of filled in because light's coming in from different directions, even if it's from the same light source. If it's a big softbox like this, a big panel of light here, light's not coming in just from this one direction. You've got it coming in from, let's say that the part of the light panels over here, you're filling in a little bit over here. Whereas if the light was smaller, then it wouldn't really be able to work around into the shadow area, right? So the bigger the light source, light's coming in from different angles and at slightly different intensities, even from the same single light source. So if what you're trying to achieve is softer looking light for your subject, what you really want to do is provide a larger light source relative to that subject. So it can be sort of a medium-sized light up really close and just out of the frame, or it could be a larger light that's pushed out a couple of feet, maybe 2, 3, 4 feet away, as long as it's nice and big. Another way to think of that is that you want light coming in from different angles at different intensities, to fill in the shadows. Now, one way to get light to just disperse all over the place, to basically fill a whole room up with light, is to, say, just blast the wall, the opposite to your subject, just blast that wall and the ceiling and parts of the room with just a big flash of light, and you'll get a lot of light coming in from a lot of different directions, and yeah, you'll get a very kind of even looking illumination. But if you want more nuanced effects, you want to have a little contrast here or there, depending on what you're trying to achieve. Something that I like, a little bit of contrast. You can achieve this with different types of modifiers and the way that you use those modifiers, and changing up the distance between, let's say, the light and the backside of the modifier, or changing the distance between these two things and the subject itself. So you've got, just distance has a lot to do with it. The types of modifiers that you're using, have a lot to do with it. So as long as you keep these basic fundamentals in mind, you'll be able to make an educated guess, at least, as to how you should start off, what type of modifier to use, the distances you should use, and that'll put you in the ballpark of where you want to be in terms of contrast versus soft light. Okay, so let me know what your favorite soft light technique is, and we'll talk about it in the comments. And I think that's about all I got for you today, guys. So until next time, make sure you click that like button, click subscribe. If you're not already subscribed, why wouldn't you be subscribed by now? I'm sure you've seen a lot of my videos. What? Yeah, why? Make sure you hit subscribe, leave some comments, and yeah, that's about it for today, guys. Until next time, if I'm still here, you'll see me in the next video.